Tired of feeling tired? Done with diet culture? Overwhelmed by conflicting nutrition and fitness messages? Then join us, your hosts of the Nutrition Revolution podcast, as we take a deep dive into all things women's fitness and nutrition. I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Tabitha. And together we are debunking diet culture myths and giving you the tools you need to finally see the results you're looking for. All right, I think the question is, to cold plunge or not to cold plunge?
Heck yeah.
Kimberly is, if you don't follow her on social media, you need to. If you do follow her on social media, you know that she is plunging
I'm a huge
all
fan.
the time. She's plunging in straight up buckets that I not buckets, but what you have like a
the other
bathtub,
day I had
right?
to smash it open
Smash
with
the ice open.
a hammer
Yes.
to get a hole enough to get into the ice plunge.
So what do you have, like a whole tub in your backyard?
Yeah, it's actually just a horse trough.
Okay.
From Tractor Supply.
Okay.
And it has like a thing where you can drain it, so we can drain it and clean it.
Okay, that was actually my question.
Yeah.
Was
oh yeah.
And how often do you have to clean that?
So winter not as much because
it's so cold.
It's so cold. Nothing's living in there, gross. And also like our feet, we're like literally coming from the back door into the cold plunge and then right back. Where in the summertime, it's like there's grass or dirt or whatever. Yeah. So you don't have to clean it that much during the winter. In the summer, I clean it once a week. We empty it all out. I scrub it all down, and then we refill it. And
how do you keep it cold in the summer? So
in the summer, we actually have these silicone ice makers. They're huge. They're like you make blocks of ice with them. Okay. And those go in our deep freezer. And so we take those big blocks and put them in there. And then when we're ready to cold plunge, we'll get in. So if you put them in like an hour before, it'll keep it cold. Okay. But we'll talk about this more, but I actually cycle cold plunging. I don't do it all summer long, only if I feel like I need it.
Okay. So what would you say is your go-to winter cold plunge schedule and then your summer?
Yeah. So the reason I started cold plunging, let's start there. I was completely resistant to it. My husband started doing it. He wrecked on a mountain bike years ago and has pins in his arm and has a lot of scar tissue and things like that, pain, nerve damage in his arm. And he was noticing that it was hurting him a lot. And so bro science, he saw all these people cold plunging and was like, well, let me try it.
Well, and not even bro science, but like rest, compression, elevation. Yeah. If you have a sprain or an injury,
that's what you do
to ice it, right? To decrease inflammation. Okay. So anyways.
Yeah. So he was like, well, I keep seeing that this can help with inflammation, which is part of the problem. So he was like, let me just try it. And so he started doing it a year before I even did it. And I was like, this is crazy, dumb. Absolutely not. Never getting in. I hate the cold. And anyone who knows me knows that come November and it starts to get chilly, like that first cold, my bones get cold and I'm done. I'm like, no, I'm done. I don't want to be here anymore. I need the beach. And so I hate cold. And, so I just thought it was crazy. And in my brain, I thought it was bro science. This doesn't work. This is just in your head. It's psychological.
I mean, there is a lot of bro science to it in the sense that the overwhelming majority of the data that you hear of all the health benefits, again, are based on male data. With that being said, there is enough research done on women and what benefits women can experience. And we'll talk about that. Right. So bro science, yes and no.
Yeah.
Mainly geared towards men, again, because of male participants in research. But
I just thought it was that David
Voodoo
Goggins.
magic?
No, just like that David Goggins. Who's going to carry the boats? You got to be the toughest.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Flex.
And my husband is very much, he's done Ironmans, full Ironman. So he is very much how far can I push myself?
Okay.
And what is the limit? And then I'm going to go beyond that wall. Okay. And so for me, in my brain, that's just another one of his things.
He's like an adrenaline junkie that way.
Yeah.
He gets a thrill.
And, so he was doing it and I was like, no. And so he did it for a year. And then I tend to get foot inflammation pretty easily. And so I would
plantar fasciitis?
Yeah. Or? Just swelling. It started when I got pregnant with Jackson and it's been at bay. But, so I would just stand in ice buckets, which is something they had me do when I was pregnant to reduce the inflammation. So I would stand in ice buckets in the summer. If we empty out the cooler from the beach, I would stand in the ice bucket and just kind of leave it at the gym before I went in. And that was something I did regularly and it helped. So,
So you started becoming a believer because you were dipping
I was dipping my little toes
in some freezing cold water. Okay.
So actually,
so it was like the gateway drug of cold
was.
plunging.
It was, right?
Freezing your feet is the gateway drug, y'all.
Be careful.
Yeah.
So he used
Starts
it
with one
for
dip.
his body.
Okay.
Inflammation.
So is he immersing up to his neck?
Yeah,
Or
hands in.
Hands in.
He'll
He's
even
all
dunk
in.
his whole body in.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's
he
next
will
level.
actually get in, dunk in, and then stay
Come out.
sitting there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually started cold plunging for completely different reasons. Had nothing to do with inflammation, nothing to do with muscle
Except for the
soreness.
feet.
Except for the feet.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
just that. The submersion actually started happening more of an emotional reason. So I, again, hate cold. I struggle with seasonal depression really, really bad.
Same.
It's awful. Like,
Yeah. It's the worst.
yeah, it's terrible. And it's
Seasonal affective disorder. It's sad.
It is sad.
Quite literally.
It is sad.
Pun intended.
So that was me, and I just couldn't get through winter without having some sort of emotional breakdown. Like I was just
feeling depressed.
couldn't
no
get
motivation.
motivated to do anything. And in like 2021, so post COVID, I had some things that had happened in my life that were really, really rough. And that first winter was probably the worst for me, where I literally felt like life is not worth it. I don't want to be here anymore. So it was a major struggle. And
It was a dark time. It's scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's terrible. So I remember telling my husband, I have moments where I just don't want to be here. And like, you need to just kind of watch me, like monitor that for me, because it was a struggle. And so he said, if that's something that you're struggling with, why don't you just do something that makes you not feel numb? And that's what I always told him. Like, I just feel so numb. Nothing makes me happy. Nothing makes me sad. Like, I just don't feel anything. And I just want to feel something. And trying to explain to him, like, have you ever been through life and you don't feel anything? He's like, no, I don't get that. I don't relate. And so one day he got in and he was like, whoo, like, I feel so good. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this will make me feel something. And I got in and I just sat there for like 5 minutes. And I was like,
How
my
cold
gosh.
was it for 5 minutes?
This was early winter, like
So on
not
the
cold
higher
enough yet.
end of cold water.
It was
Okay.
like that 50 degrees.
Okay, yeah, I was
kind
gonna
of
say
frame.
we'll talk about too, like what temperature ranges, because I think people tend to think that cold water
Has to be,
immersion
like,
it has to
19
be like
degrees.
ice, like polar plunge.
No.
Like if there's not ice floating in there with you, like what are you
Yeah.
doing? Get out, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
You was
Yeah. So it was kind of that,
was just
like,
cool.
Like it matched the temperature of the air.
Okay.
And I was like, I can sit here, and I actually felt something. It was like this dopamine hit that I needed to motivate me to get up and do
Yes.
something else.
It's actually norepinephrine.
Yes. Yeah.
Is what is improving like mental focus and clarity. And anyways, okay, I digress. Go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
so I mean, it's true. So I got out and I was like, I actually feel good. And so every day I got in all winter long, and my goal was like get in at least once a week. Anything beyond that is like, because I really need it. And so that first winter, I feel like I was in it all the time. And
So you started noticing that it was helping you with like the seasonal affective disorder, the bouts of depression.
Yep.
Okay. What about anxiety? Was that something you were struggling with too?
Yeah.
Okay. So like
You name it, I got it.
concurrent like depression, anxiety, but related specifically to the season. Like come summer, you felt like a whole new
summertime,
person.
I was like, I don't
you
need
were
that anymore.
born
Like
again?
that first warm day, I'm
Yeah.
like, whoo, I'm at the beach and I'm fine.
Okay.
That gave me my dopamine hit that I needed. So I did it all winter long, and I noticed that the following winter, come that like first chilly day, my body started craving like the cold. Like let's get in the cold plunge. Let's start again. Let's do this over again. And so it was a little bit easier to like remember my brain, you need this. This helps with your seasonal depression. Like get in, do your thing, and then nothing is going to feel as awful as that for the rest of the winter. And so it gave me that, like, I climbed that wall and got in and I was okay. So for 2 years, that was it. I used it for my anxiety and depression, and I felt like it really kind of pulled me out. And then since then, I feel like I have not struggled with my seasonal depression the way that I used to. And I used to be, awful. And now I go outside and I go hiking and I walk every day and I am not as disgusted by the cold weather that I used to be.
So it's a multifaceted approach. Like you have found that getting outside and getting regular fresh air and sunshine, even when it's cold, combined with your cold water immersion therapy has drastically improved your seasonal affective disorder symptoms. Would you say that you feel like you don't deal with it at all, or it's just vastly
This year
improved?
I haven't. This year I told a couple people this year, because they're like, oh, you know, are you cold plunging every day? And I'm like, not every day, but like once a week.
Girl, it looks like you are, because every time I see your stories,
So
I'm
I
like,
do
there
once
she
a week.
is
I
in her
have to
ice.
do once a week. But it's been harder to cold plunge this year because I'm not depressed. And it's really hard to do the thing that helps with your depression when you're not depressed. And so in my brain, I'm like, well, you have to do it once a week because this is helping.
Okay.
But also, like, it's so hard to hit that threshold of like, just get in the tub, because it's not.
Okay.
In my brain, I don't need it this year the way that I've needed it in the past, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. Also, though, once a week is a good goal.
Oh, yeah.
It's a smart goal.
Yes. Yeah. So when I
It's doable.
started, I told myself, well, the first time I did it, I just needed to feel something. And then when I decided that I was going to see if this was a thing, I told myself, it doesn't matter how long you stay in. You have to get in just get in. Like, get in the tub. And I remember my daughter got in with me when it was snowing and it was icy. And we were just like, let's just do it for fun. We'll just get in. So I told my brain, you don't have to stay in for a set time. Just put your feet in, squat down, and then you can allow yourself to get out. And so I did. We got in, put our feet down, sunk in, and my husband has it on video, and it's hilarious. We both look at each other like, oh my gosh. And we got out. I don't think I even lasted 30 seconds. It just, didn't go well. And then I learned the breath work and the techniques to push through and fight through and climb those walls. And you hit like a 30-second mark. I'm climbing a wall. I'm getting through another minute. All right. And then you just kind of realize, okay, I can do this. And, it takes time. It takes breath work. It takes learning to focus and breathe through the uncomfortable parts of cold therapy.
All right, I love it. Thank you for sharing all of that information.
Have you done it?
So I have never done the immersion in like a trough or bathtub of like ice water.
Ice water.
So I'm very similar to you in the sense that I loathe the cold weather. I tell my kids not to say hate because it's such a strong word, but I hate winter.
It's an accurate description for winter.
No, it really, truly is. And I deal with seasonal affective disorder. I don't think quite as intense as what you've described, but enough that it is disruptive to like my happiness and well-being in the winter. Like I feel just more sad.
Yeah.
Motivation, like all the things, it's harder.
Blah.
And exactly. Just more blah. And then it's the same thing. It's like, as soon as we get to like daylight savings in March and those clocks spring forward and we get like that 65 and the sun's out there, like I can literally feel the ice shedding from my inside. It's like, I feel like my soul comes alive and I'm like, oh, I made it through. I can do it. So I don't do the submerging my body. I do cold showers at the end, but I don't do it after every shower.
Okay.
I do it probably just once a week.
Yeah.
I try in like the dead of winter, and I prefer to do it following my workout. And there's a reason why. And I'll talk about that science for women here in a little bit, but I'll do it. I just turn it as cold as I can handle, where I'm like, I don't like this.
It's a shock and your body feels like it needs to get out, but you can survive.
It takes your breath away, and then you have to like really focus. And I really only do it like 30 seconds.
Okay.
It has been beneficial.
Yeah.
Where do we even start with talking about like what it actually does?
Right. So there's the emotional, psychological side, right? I think we've talked about that. Let's kind of talk about the actual effects on our body. What is cold exposure doing?
I think it's fun to know how this all got started.
Okay.
So if you are an avid cold plunger, you may or not know this about Wim Hof. And sorry, Wim Hof, if I'm mispronouncing your name, but he's a Dutch extreme athlete. Mm-hmm. Yes. And he's also a motivational speaker. So he's the one that's like popularized it. Mm-hmm. He's made it like mainstream as a way to reduce inflammation, improve like hormonal metabolic health, the idea of increasing fat metabolism by building up more of the brown fat or the
getting rid of
brown
the
adipose tissue, boost your endorphins and the norepinephrine for the elevated mood and, energy levels and mental focus. I will say, because I am someone that so very much despises the cold, mm-hmm. I initially was like you, very similar, like totally resistant to it. I'm also not someone that just jumps on every biohacking bandwagon, like hot topic. Like I like to do my due diligence and like sit back and see what are the experts that I follow, in the fields of, nutrition and training, exercise physiology, exercise science. What are they saying? What is the research actually showing to us? And then, people that I know that are doing it, like, I'm not just going to like start doing something just like because it's trendy.
Like, let's see if it works.
Well, you weren't though. You watched your husband do it for like a whole year. So I'm similar to that. Like, I'm not just going to be like, oh, this is it. Right.
I am a big believer in breath work. And
yes,
Wim Hof,
same.
His breathing through the cold, that technique does work. It's very powerful.
I agree. And if you don't know about him and you think like, oh, he just started this, like he has a whole like program.
I mean, the Navy SEALs do it. And so it must be,
breathwork dates back. I mean, ancient Greco-Roman, ancient Chinese, Chinese medicine. Like this is not
study
something
any
that's
yoga
new.
and
People
you'll
like,
see. Mm-hmm.
It may be new for a lot of people living in the Western Hemisphere that, mainstream. It's like, oh, what is this breath work? Like that's been around for all of time. Right. Okay. Anyways, we digress. So Wim Hof has like popularized it and has a program training protocol. If you're interested in that, you can do your own Google research on that. But I will say one thing to keep in mind for our listeners that are maybe like, heck no. Cause like, I'm kind of heck no, I'm not going to go outside in a trough in the middle of the winter and submerge in ice water. I will do the cold shower. The long-term effects are very similar to what regular exercise does. Mm-hmm. And I will say for me, battling the seasonal affective disorder, like regular exercise is the game changer for me. Mm-hmm.
Keeping your routine.
Can literally in the morning wake up and feel like I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do this. I could even sometimes cry. Yeah. Just like, why? Like just random, like, you know what I mean?
Why do I live where the wind hurts my face?
I'm a mom and moms, we get up and we do what we have to do. Right. So we do it for our babies and that's our job. And so I get up and I do what I need to do. And then everybody's gone. Like, and then it's just me and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to. Yeah. And I go and I do the exercise and I literally feel like a different person when I finish that movement. And it doesn't always have to be this like, kill you sweat session, like
just
yoga,
the habit and the routine,
right? The habit, the routine. So that is very, very beneficial for me. And that's really what I utilize and cling to: my exercise routine, good sleep, nutrient dense foods. That's very helpful for me. The cold showers, I utilize that for recovery from my exercise more than the like mood boosting things. Although I know that it helps with that. That's not my main focus. So I guess that kind of leads us into how cold do women need to go? Like because we know like men and women are different. Right. We have different responses to almost everything. Yeah. And so what do we know about cold plunging for women? Because there are sex differences. Like, so men, after they exercise, they vasoconstrict. So that means that all the blood automatically gets shunted centrally and into their muscles and organs, where women, after exercise, we vasodilate. So all that blood pools underneath our skin, under that subcutaneous layer of fat. And so women get real benefit from any kind of like cold air or colder water exposure post training to basically, instead of vasodilate and have the blood pool under the skin, to vasoconstrict and pull that blood back in centrally and send it to our organs and our muscles, which aids in recovery and decreases inflammation. exercise in and of itself, followed by adequate nutrition, also reduces inflammation. So if you are listening and you're like, I just don't think that I'm going to cold plunge, there are other, like, I do want people to know that, like, there are lots of ways to reduce inflammation. Yeah. This is just another tool in your tool belt.
Yeah.
Your toolkit.
And I think you just kind of, I've hosted events where I've had women come over and we've done cold plunges together. Some people cannot handle the cold plunge. Like, their bodies just don't react well to it. Their central nervous system is like, absolutely not. This is not for you. And they actually go into panic mode. It's not for them. And not everyone should be cold plunging. So if you have a heart condition or you have underlying conditions that maybe your body shouldn't have these drastic changes in temperature,
you should talk to your doctor.
And
get clearance if you're in that. Well, to your point though, actually, so women don't need it be as cold as men to get the same benefits. We start shivering actually at higher temperatures. So this is a squirrel moment. You guys know that's what I'm here for. The standards of like temperature settings in air conditioning and heat in industrial building, like business places of business, are based off of male data shivering points, and women start shivering at higher temperatures than men, which is why you hear so many women
I'm cold all the time
in the professional space that are like, I'm freezing in this office in the middle of July. Well, it's because the air conditioning standards of like what it should be set at uniformly are based on the male like shivering threshold. So women are more cold intolerant. We're more sensitive to cold. So some of those women that you've talked about that are, even more sensitive, menopause transition actually decreases our sensitivity to the cold. So the good news is, if you are interested in trying this out, you don't need to sit in ice water. Actually, it's 32 degrees to 59. Yeah. Which 59 degrees is just a cold shower.
Yeah.
So that's what I can handle. Yeah. And that is what I'm willing to do once a week-ish, and definitely like after my more intense exercise sessions for the purpose of repair and recovery and decreasing that inflammation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you can cold plunge, but if your diet's trash and your sleep is trash, and you're overtraining, it's not a cure. It's not a miracle fix-all.
Cold plunging. So it does help with your metabolism. And so there's this like group of people who are only doing it because their it's going to reset my metabolism. It's going to help with metabolic health. It's not if you're eating trash.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So don't use it for weight loss. You need to figure out, do you really need it? Is it something that you just want to challenge yourself and see if you can do it? Is it something
There's
where
power to doing like hard things? Yeah.
Girl, so the other thing that I noticed, and I've talked with friends about this too. So my husband also, he has a really high stress job, and he actually does the breath work, Wim Hof like breath work, through his cold plunging also. And what he has noticed is that when he's in a high stress meeting with work, he can sync his mindset back to that cold plunge was really hard. Here I did my breath work. It centers him and like zones him in, so that when he's in those meetings, he's actually very calm and collected and relaxed, even though it's an extreme, intense, the world is falling apart kind of a meeting, government work.
So he's activating his parasympathetic drive.
Sure.
He's harnessing the power of that. And that's very powerful. Yeah,
so there's that mindfulness of like, all right, take me back to something that was harder than this. I can get through anything. And so, that's helpful. So if you have,
power of the mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mindset thing, and being able to just wake up, get in there and freeze your butt off and then get out. Like, it's just one of those things where like, I did something today. Sometimes it's just like, I just need to do something today. Like, I've had moments where I'm like, start scrolling on my phone, or I just feel like I can't function. I don't do caffeine, so I can't have coffee. Like, I just am like, ugh, like I just feel draggy. And so I will go cold plunge. I'll be like, all right, you need to do something to like say you accomplished something today. You did something hard today. You can check something off your list. And I will go get in the cold plunge and be like, if I did nothing else today, that's what I did. And I feel good about it, And so, yeah.
Yeah. If you are listening and you want to harness cold plunging for benefits that are not necessarily mental, the more physiological ones, do start with a cool shower.
Yeah.
That absolutely counts. Again, like I said, that 32 degrees to 59 degrees. Fun fact, if you are going through that menopause transition, so if you're pretty much like in your 40s and beyond, and you have a hard time with your sleep, taking a cool shower before bedtime helps bring down your core temperature, and it actually lulls you to sleep. So a good like protocol for there is starting on, and what I like to utilize is starting on warm water. So you don't want to like overload and shock your system.
Right.
Start on warm water, gradually turn down the hot water to where it's cool and you feel chilled. So that's where that nuance comes in, where like everybody's different.
Yeah.
And in general, again, 32 to 59 degrees. So like the cold part of your shower, you feel chilled. You're kind of like, all right, I need to like take a few deep breaths through this.
Right.
And you can do that for just like 30 seconds. Yeah. Then get out, let yourself like dry off with a towel. Don't like blast heat on you. Just dry off with a towel, get in your jammies, get into bed, and that can actually help you drift into deeper, more restorative sleep faster. So it improves your sleep latency, so the time that it takes you to fall asleep, and then your ability to stay asleep for longer. So it can be restorative in that aspect too. So if you're like, okay, I want to try this out, but there's no way on God's green earth that I'm getting into a trough of ice water. Same. I feel you, not happening. The cold shower, I think, is or cool shower even, is a really good starting point.
Even just going outside. So like right now.
That'll count too in the winter. Go outside
in the winter with like an appropriate amount of clothing, right? Like don't go streaking, unless you're on property and you just want to go streaking.
Right,
but
you want to be like,
with an appropriate amount of clothing, sometimes we'll just like go for a walk in our t-shirt, like to the mailbox, like, just like some cold exposure.
So you get that chill.
You get that chill. It can have just as good of
so it doesn't even have to necessarily, you can do the cold air,
right?
Therapy,
cold air.
Absolutely.
Just getting in that cold.
And I've even done that too when I have like finished, because like I said earlier, I like it following a strenuous workout for me. But if I'm like, I can't wait to get into my hot shower, because I just love it on my muscles, and it just
feels
I love
good.
It. Yes, I love the heat. I will, in the winter, I'll step outside in my like tank top and shorts or whatever I worked out in, and like just sit out there on my back patio, kind of breathe. And I can usually do that depending on how cold it is outside. I can do it for like a minute or so. And that really helps again with that vasoconstriction, shunting the blood back into your muscles and organs centrally to help aid in repair, reduce the inflammation, and it can boost your mood as well.
Yeah, we did snow angels in the snow in just like our regular clothes.
Love it.
And
that counts.
Yeah. I have a friend that lives in Montana, and she's like, that's like a Montana cold plunge. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing the Montana cold plunge. Snow angels in our t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah. I have Raynaud's syndrome.
Yes.
So I have vasoconstriction in my extremities, and it actually, I developed it like in my 30s.
Wow.
And as I become more cold intolerant as I get older, which is a thing for women, we experience that. But I have Raynaud's syndrome. It's like I went to my doctor, and I was like, listen, from like my first two knuckles on my fingers, if I get cold, like it can happen any time of year.
Yeah.
You know, if I get cold enough, they turn completely white and I lose all feeling. And it happens in my toes too. And I was explaining it to him, and he's like, Raynaud's syndrome. And, the lifestyle factors are like, eat a nutrient dense, diet.
Check.
Right? Exercise regularly. Triple check.
Yeah.
Don't drink alcohol. Check. Avoid caffeine and stimulants. Check. I'm like,
don't do any of those things.
Are
you caffeine free too?
Yeah. Well, no, not necessarily caffeine. I don't drink coffee. I will occasionally have caffeine, but it's like the exception, not the rule for me. I actually prefer to just focus on better quality sleep and make that the priority over like caffeinating myself. Yeah. I will actually, if I use caffeine, it's usually because I want like a little bit of like a pre-workout.
Gotcha.
But it's just cheaper to have like a protein shake that has a little caffeine in it. Because I'm not a big soda drinker, although I love a good fountain soda. But that's like a treat more so. So I'll use that maybe for like a stimulant for exercise. Yeah. But again, it's rare. It's the exception, not the rule. So yes and no, not really. Okay. Well, anyways, what were we saying?
Raynaud's.
Oh yeah, with the Raynaud's syndrome. So I actually have to be careful with like how cold I get. Yep. So for me, the cold shower.
That works
enough. and I just do like 30 seconds, get out. And then it doesn't, like, I don't deal with the like extremities, my fingers freezing.
I get people who ask me like, you know, how cold is too cold, or like, you know, when should it start being a cold thing? And I always say, like, if you get into the water and it kind of at first kind of takes your breath away, or it feels like this, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here, push yourself a little bit more, see if you can stay in. And as long as your body starts to be like, okay, I can do this, that's, you know, good enough. Some people will get in, like, I've done dumb things where I'm like busting through the ice and sitting in it when it's like, you know, 9 degrees outside and freezing cold in the water. And, you know, at some point you're like, I could go into cold shock and this would be really dangerous. So you have to be consciously aware of your body. I don't usually do it like that unless I have like people around me that were, you know, like my husband will be like, all right, you know, get out now. Don't stay in any longer. And so you kind of have to be aware of that. Your lips are turning blue
and you're losing consciousness. That's a sign you need to get out.
Your legs quit working. So there have been times where I've gotten out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't move my legs. They're so cold. Like I just like feel like I'm going to fall. So be aware, but also like if you have underlying conditions, you need to talk to your providers before you're just like jumping into super duper cold. So I think going outside in the cold or the cold showers, kind of working yourself up. I have a friend who does ice face baths where she soaks her face in like an ice bowl.
She waterboards herself.
Yeah, I guess so. But that's her, like, that is her, like, I did this hard thing for the day. And then I think it's also part of her skincare routine. So closes those pores.
You know, my favorite saying, one of many, devil's in the dose.
Yeah.
So there is such a thing as too cold.
Yeah.
Especially for women. So being mindful of that. I am someone that prefers to err on the side of not pushing it too far to where because it actually, if it is too cold and for too long, it can actually become detrimental.
Right.
So I do think it's important for our listeners to understand that there is too much of a good thing, right? The devil's in the dose. You can be in too long to where you don't get those benefits. So that's why general guidelines are like 30 seconds, like 2 sets of 30 seconds with like 2 minutes rest on the lower end, like where you're doing the more extreme where the water's reaching like that freezing level. Or you could even go up to like 3 minutes if you're going on that higher end where it's like in the 50s, you know, 59 degrees or so on the higher, without crossing that like threshold of now this is actually harmful.
Yeah. I usually do max 7 minutes a week. So broken up.
Okay.
And that feels like the best for me is 7 minutes a week. I will get in and sit anytime from like 3 to 5 minutes.
So if you do once a week, are you doing 7 minutes?
5.
You'll do 5.
I'll do 5.
Okay. Now, will you still do 5 even if it's like 32 degrees, like there's ice in the water?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so here's why I cycle. Because I feel like because I'm doing it for the more psychological side,
right?
My body is just like, I could just sit here all day. And so I set an alarm and like it goes off and I get out when that alarm goes off. But I feel like I am adapted to it. Like I get adapted to it pretty quickly in the winter. And so if it's not a struggle for me anymore, then what's the point of doing it? So I've done things like gotten in, sat in, 5 minutes is no problem. So then I will get out and I will stand and air dry. So that was my other way of like, all right, I need to feel a little bit more. I need to push myself a little bit more. And so I'll air dry. And so as long as it's not like super windy or incredibly cold, I will do that. I don't run to a hot shower or a hot room. Like I just let myself naturally come back to, you know, that homeostasis temperature that I need. So I'm cycling through. And then so in the summertime, like I will do my feet in the summer. Or if I really feel like I need to do it, then I'll do the ice bath after like a really hard workout or something. Or if my husband's doing it, then I'll hop into. But most of the summer, I'm not doing it every day or even every week. So that when the winter comes, it feels like I'm starting over again. So having that like cycle and having to work myself back up into what I was doing helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we adapt to our environments too. Like, if you read about people that live closer to the poles, you know, they
walk around in shorts and t-shirt.
When it's like 35 degrees out, they're like, oh, it's hot, you know. Whereas like my mom grew up in Florida, and she would say how like in the winters there, she grew up down like Fort Lauderdale, Marco Island area, and she's like, you know, it would be like 65 degrees, and I'm wearing a coat out and about. So again, you adapt to your environment. So you definitely, you know, can adjust accordingly. So I think takeaway, it is not the holy grail miracle cure or fix. There are lots of ways to lower inflammation in the body. This is just another tool in that health and wellness toolkit. And there is like a range, like you don't have to sit in ice water. You can start with, or even just stay with more that like higher, like, you know, in the 50s, where it's just like a cool shower to get benefit physiologically, if that's your goal.
Yeah. I'd like to know if you try it.
Let us know if you do try it. All right.
Sounds good.
That's a wrap. Thanks for spending your time with us. If you found this podcast helpful, we would love for you to share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform. If you have nutrition or fitness questions you want answered on future episodes, we would love to hear from you. You can submit these questions to our email, thenutritionrevolutionpodcast@gmail.com, and follow us on Instagram @thenutritionrevolutionpodcast.